Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar. My name is Zhihan, a research assistant at SSR, and I will be your host for today. We are honored to have Dr. Eric Hu and Ms. Zhou Yiwei as our speakers. Dr. Hu is a Deputy Director and Principal Clinical Psychologist from the Translational Social Research Division at the National Council of Social Service. Ms. Zhou Yiwei is a Senior Clinical Psychologist and Senior Manager from the Clinical and Forensic Psychology Service at the Ministry of Social and Family Development. Together, they will be sharing on how they evaluated the effectiveness of functional family therapy on a few outcomes for youth offenders in Singapore. We also have with us Associate Professor Eddie Tong from the NUS Psychology Department, who is also the co-director of SSR to moderate this session. Before I hand over my time to them, I'll first make a few announcements. First, we are streaming this on Zoom, and this session is also recorded live on the SSR Facebook page. Once the webinar is over, we will upload a recording on our Facebook page, which also contains recordings of our previous webinars. By participating in this Zoom webinar, you consent to this recording and for SSR to use our webinar recordings for publicity purposes. We hope that you will ask questions on the speaker's research. We have a pigeonhole link that we will send in the Zoom chat where you can post your questions later. If you see a question that you like, you can vote for the question so that it appears higher on the list. In the latter half of the Q&A session, we will also be opening up the floor in the Zoom room where you may turn on your camera and microphone to ask your questions directly. However, do note that we will not be taking questions from the Zoom chat and the Facebook comments section. As we have a limited amount of time for the Q&A, we apologize if we are unable to address some of your questions. Please stay on after the Q&A session for our feedback poll. Finally, registration for our realist evaluation workshop is open until the 24th of April. The workshop will be held online on 12 and 13 May, and it will be conducted by Dr. Robin Tan, our research fellow at SSR. You may scan the QR code on the screen or visit our website to find out more about the workshop and the registration details. With that, I'll now pass my time to Eric and Yiwei. Thank you.
Thanks, Zhihan. A very wonderful Wednesday afternoon, everyone. It has been 2 years since we are in this pandemic, and many of us get the chance to spend more time with our families. This is also the case for a boy called Sean, but he is not too happy about it. Sean has been on probation for rioting charges. He seldom sees his siblings because they keep running away from home. His parents quarrel with each other very often. His father drinks alcohol almost every day, and his mother has depression. All of them have received some form of counseling, but the good changes didn't last. They continue blaming one another for their problems. Everyone felt trapped and isolated. Families like Sean's made us realize that it's not enough to just work with the individuals. Something fundamental didn't change. We need to work with the whole family. And this is why we brought in functional family therapy from the US in late 2014. FFT is a short-term and intensive family intervention, which takes place every week for 4 to 6 months. It's strength-based, works with the whole family system, and is supported by strong research evidence from different countries over the world. Many people ask us, how is FFT different from other family work? First, it works with the youth and families at the time and places that's convenient for them throughout the intervention. There are no individual sessions. This was really a big challenge for me when I just started doing FFT. There were so many times, especially during family conflicts, that I really want to just see the individuals first before seeing the families together. It's more manageable and also less intimidating for me. But the model doesn't allow us to do that. In a way, it pushes me to look at the family struggles from a relational perspective. And over time, I realized that it actually helped me to not get triangulated by the family members and help the family to reduce their finger pointing at each other. When FFT addresses the family issues, it focuses on the relational issues first by reframing the individual struggle as a family struggle. So for Sean's family, an FFT therapist will tell them, all of you are really very relentless in seeking emotional connections from one another, even through behaviors like aggression, alcohol use, and so on. The behaviors are dysfunctional, but your desire for emotional connection is mutual and it's very real. With that, the families are more likely to see themselves on the same page and work together to address their struggles. When FFT teaches skills, it focuses on family risk factors first, before the individual risk factors. This is so that the family members can practice the skills together at home before they generalize them to other contexts in their life. FFT is not about mediating family conflicts. At the end of the day, we want to reduce families' and individuals' risks and increase their strength. With such understanding, we conducted a randomized controlled trial study for youth probationers between 2015 and 2018. We wanted to find out the effectiveness of FFT in Singapore based on 3 indicators: youth well-being, family functioning, and probation completion rate. We randomized 120 youth probationers who met FFT criteria into 2 groups, FFT and treatment as usual. I would like to highlight a few criteria here. First, the youth needs to be between 11 to 18 years of age. Their YLS score, which indicates their risk of general reoffending, needs to be at least moderate in the family domain and overall domain. And the youth needs to stay with their caregiver on a regular basis. This is so that they get a chance to interact regularly with their caregivers and to practice the skills together. Here are the measures and analyses we used for this study. We used the YOQSR to measure youth well-being, FADGF to measure family functioning, and the analysis methods we used were mixed ANOVA, reliable change index, and multiple logistic regression. 96.8% of families agreed to attend the sessions. 16.4% of families dropped out either due to scheduling difficulties or revoked probation order. On average, our therapy spent about 4.7 months and around 12 sessions to complete FFT for each family. This is shorter than a lot of other family work. Before we look at the results, we want to first look at the fidelity level for the therapist. This tells us how much the therapists are doing what they're supposed to do and how well they're doing it. As you can see, our therapist level of fidelity was consistently above the international benchmark. And in terms of the results, we looked at both aggregate change and reliable change. For youth's well-being, there were significant differences between the 2 groups over time. The higher YOQ score indicate more emotional and behavioral issues. So as you can see, sustained improvement in youth well-being was observed in the FFT group. And the percentage of youth who demonstrate reliable improvement in their well-being was also higher in the FFT group as compared to the TAU group. In terms of family functioning, we didn't find any significant difference in both groups over time about the aggregate change of family functioning. There was also no group difference in that. Nevertheless, higher percentage of FFT families reported reliable improvement as compared to TAU group. And lastly, probationers in the FFT group were 4 times more likely to complete probation order as compared to TAU. We were highly encouraged by the positive outcomes from the RCT study, and we would like to find out more in the longer term what can be done. So with that, I shall pass the stage to Eric to talk about what's beyond RCT and the lessons we have learned in this journey.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Just to check, can everyone, can I be heard? Because I had to switch the earphones midway. Okay, thanks Iwei for bringing us through very quickly the program, as well as some of the evaluation results. I guess with the completion of RCT, that leads us to the question of what's next. And I would like to share some of our sort of immediate plans with you. Next slide, please, Iwei. So the first one is really looking at evaluation beyond the RCT. The most immediate one for us is actually looking at the 3-year recidivism rate of these probationers. 3-year is usually the sort of international benchmark / figure that they're looking at. But this also gives us the opportunity to look at whether the results from the RCT can actually be sustained over a longer period of time. Actually, we are at the cusp of gathering that data right now. I think the last participant who was on the trial, his recidivism data should be coming in sometime second half of this year. So that we can, hopefully, the most compelling scenario for us is that we find the FFT good treatment gains maintained even after 3 years. And it'll be even more compelling if we see sort of further decline in the control group. I think that will really lend very strong evidence for why we really need to target families, work with families when we work with children and young people. The second thing we are actually planning to do, I was just talking to the NUS folks just before this, is actually looking at the cost effectiveness of doing such a program. I think when my bosses hear that we are bringing a program in and it's going to cost us X amount of dollars to train only a few therapists and serve, as you can tell, not like a whole lot of kids, the natural reaction is that, wow, this is so expensive. Is this sustainable or not? Do I really want to keep pumping in that money every year just so that I can have FFT for the youth probationers? Or they'll be asking, hey, yeah, you tell me 4 times more, right? You're spending 100K more each year worth of that sort of effectiveness that we are seeing. So these are some of the questions that we are plagued with, and we really want to not necessarily to prove. I mean, our aim isn't really to prove them wrong, but we really want to put it out there in a transparent manner to really look at an apples for apples, right, comparison for the programs that the control group goes through versus the ones that the FFT group goes through. Do we have savings in terms of costs? Because at least from our mind, just looking at the programming itself, we think there is savings in manpower, because if you have one therapist to serve the entire family at one session a week for I think almost 5 months, that really beats having to send different family members to different treatment providers over an extended period of time. So I think that we are working on that hunch, and we are hoping to find that the data also helps align that narrative and show that, hey, actually, even though the cost seems high upfront, but you're really saving during the treatment phase, And beyond that, if you're able to save more youths from being coming back into the system, actually there's a greater amount of savings there. And that, of course, doesn't stop us from continuing monitoring the program and its effectiveness. I think what's useful after we've done an evaluation study like this is that we have the opportunity to go back and think, see what do we want to collect? Because now if we know that it's effective, the team actually has that liberty to collect less because I don't need that sort of amount of information. It just tracks certain indicators which are useful for us. And I think as Iwe sort of went through just now, the fidelity piece, that's actually a very core piece in FFT that we actually make sure everything falls in line before we even look at effectiveness or treatment outcomes. So that actually forms the core of our practice where we will track that and monitor that closely, where therapists may develop sort of learning needs. We are quick to go in there to sort of provide extra training, supervision, just to make sure we help bolster that sort of that area. Because we know at least that if therapists are able to maintain a certain level of competency in doing the FFT work, we're confident that the results will sort of follow as well. So that's for longer term evaluation. Iwe, next slide, please.
Sorry, the screen a bit stuck.
Iwe fell asleep. Every time I thought she would fall asleep.
No, the screen stuck. Okay.
So with the evaluation findings, it also gave us a bit more confidence to scale the program further. I think since we started, we have expanded to several teams now serving really the sort of two ends of the spectrum where you have child protection, child welfare cases before they even come in the system. We want to prevent removal of children. We are also at serving the at-risk youth in the Family Guidance Order, or previously known as BPC. I'm sure those of you who are familiar with this particular group, you know almost always they come in with very acrimonious family relationship. And for the longest time, the ministry actually also struggled to know how do I deal with these sort of relational, intense relational problems within the family. And I think where we started getting good results from the probationer group, we were confident and say, hey, this is something we need to do and do better for those at-risk youth in the Family Guidance Order. And of course, with the service expansion, we also went all the way downstream. We are planting ourselves in residential homes. So you have boys' home, girls' home, hostels, even children's home. Our aim of being there is to make sure that the reintegration work for the children and young people is done as best as we can for their families, so that the ones they get released from the homes, the chances of them sort of circling back to us is lesser. Next slide, please. We have covered a fair bit on everything regarding FFT in the last 20 minutes or so. I thought we wanted to share just some of our key learning points as well to end this presentation. To be honest, this journey in terms of practicing FFT as well as implementing FFT, I'm sure it's the same for Iwe as well, has taught us a lot in terms of our own clinical skills, the way I view my work, the perspectives I have of the families that we work with, leading a team of young psychologists who are sort of thrown into this really intense work dealing with very difficult families day in, day out. The list really goes on in terms of what we've really gained out of the program so far. But I thought for today's session, I would just it'd be nice to just share like 3 reflections specific to sort of research and evaluation. Of course, if NUS gives us the opportunity next time, we can share about the practice aspect of things. But I thought that's why we will take it and end this presentation. Next one, please. Thank you. I'm sure the word sustainable and sustainability is not foreign to many of us. But three things really stand out for us. And I have to say, this is not new. We didn't come up with this. If you look at implementation models that's out there, they also say the same things, but it is through the experience of implementing FFT that these really stand out for us. Firstly, the manual, having a clearly articulated program manual that tells you what you need to do, when, and how to do it is very important. This especially so when you're trying something really new. The manual will ground not just your staff, your practitioners, but also leadership. When things gets a little bit tough, the manual will say, okay, this is what it needs to be done. This is how we do it. We just need to focus on doing the way it is. For us, I think Yi-Wei mentioned slightly a little bit of it earlier. For us, it could be as simple as skipping to family sessions because FFT requires us to deal exclusively with the family. We don't take individuals out and do individual sessions. I can assure you that when you see families quarreling, shouting, arguing with one another in front of you, even myself, I have the urge to say, okay, you all stop quarreling. Okay, I talk to who first? Tomorrow, next week, then we continue the session. But the model actually requires us to press in, to use the skills that is within the program manual to really push through these difficulties with the family. If we had strayed from the manual, I think the problem would be we wouldn't have been able to test the model, its skills, its techniques to the fullest. In fact, if we had, I think earlier on, reverted back to just doing individual sessions and running things the way we are used to running, I think you'll very quickly see no result. Or others will say, then what's the difference? If FFT is also doing individual sessions and then doing this, what's the difference? If that happened, we would have lost traction very early and implementation would have fallen apart quite quickly. And I won't be here today to talk about evaluation results, that's for sure. So the manual is really important to us. And I will touch on the point a little bit later as well, but the manual is highly, highly important especially for very intensive work that's emotionally draining, that's trying, for practitioners. The reason is because when the going gets tough, when you at first don't see maybe immediate results from the families that you work with, guys, the therapists will feel very invalidated, right? It's like, well, I go in there, that it doesn't work. It's like whatever I do, it doesn't work. But that's why I think actually the manual is very important because then our job as leaders or supervisors is to say, look, it is not about you. We are here to put the model to the family. What they're responding to is actually the model. We can only say that perhaps the model is not effective for this family at this particular time. Maybe we need to consider either referring them on to someone else who may be able to help them better at this time. I think that sort of conversation really helps practitioners sort of shake off the feeling that everything is their fault. So I think the manual has its many, many purposes, but in terms of sustainability, this is how it really helped us as a team. The second thing is program champions. Well, as the name itself suggests, these are people who are willing to step out there to sell Koyok for you, right? Who know enough of the program, who believe enough to say, hey, we need to do this for the family and keep championing for you at different levels, whether it's your immediate reporting within the department or your director facing outside the department, or even those who may be out facing towards community partners. These guys are really important because they help to shield some of the doubts that's coming in the team's way. It helps to sell Koyok. But I think the point that I wanted to highlight here is that these people don't just suddenly appear and they don't just suddenly become excellent program champions. A lot of it rests on us having that sort of regular engagements with them to talk about some of the program challenges, how we overcoming it, share with them the success. From there, it actually builds their confidence to even go out and sell more Koyok for us. So program champions are really key to sustainability of any sort of program implementation. And last but not least, of course, having strong organizational support is highly important. Well, it might mean different things. When I talk about organizational support, it might mean different things for different programs. It's up to the program managers to identify what those barriers are, and I provide the sort of practical solutions to them for those barriers. For us, the FFT team was doing most of our work between the time of 7 to 10 p.m. For us is because we also try and straddle our sort of day-to-day administrative work or other sort of clinical work that we have. It was very key for us to have a very flexible work arrangement. So actually, in fact, even before COVID, my team rarely goes into the office. If they don't have to, they don't come in. I think where they can, they will just do their work remotely, even if it means going to Starbucks, some cafe near the family's home where they can sit there and prepare the sessions and things like that. And that's how flexible we are, just so that we know it doesn't tax our practitioners having to just purely traveling eats up a lot of energy from our guys. So here's the thing: we circle back to program manual because the activities and the goals of the sessions or what's required of the therapies to be done is so well articulated. Program managers actually don't have to fuss about where are these people, are they doing their work, so long as they show up for their weekly supervision and they continue to see their families. We know that they are putting in those hours that's necessary. So it actually relieves a lot of the sort of it builds a lot of trust in the team. Don't have to go and micromanage, and it also helps to for us to help tell the management like why our guys' time are so fluid. So sustainability is key. The other thing that we've learned in this journey, I'm not sure whether what your initial response looking at the title of this slide is, but it is what it is. RCT, we didn't set off to do RCT like, I want to be the most I don't know what you call it, the most advanced or whatever team doing the evaluation out there, therefore I must go for RCT. I can tell you very simply how we ended up doing RCT. It was as simple as this. I can only start a team of, what was it? 8, I think 8 of us, actually maybe even less. And this 8 can only serve that many people, but the target population was so big, right? So then that naturally, the demand and the supply naturally puts us in a position to think about even doing something like RCT. That's how we ended up doing RCT. So it wasn't by some sort of lofty ambition that we say, this is the best thing to strive for. I assure you, no. And over those years, that's what I've also learned as well. RCT is not necessarily the gold standard, because when you go out there and say you do an RCT, there will be people who from all sorts of different, both ends of the spectrum coming to tell you to say, if you do RCT, is it even applicable to this group of people or that group of people? Can we generalize the findings? Then you have people from the other end who say, you do RCT, how can you randomly allocate clients to treatment? Isn't that unethical? You're withholding treatment from people who need it. So these are all the things that we heard. It's like, I'm just trying to make use of I'm just back then when I was younger, I was just thinking, I'm just trying to make sure what we do works. How come suddenly got this kind of backlash? So it is really not as goal as it sounds. People may say it's goal, but actually the kind of reactions that we got from different players, different partners, was really an eye opener. So that's just one part, right? Then you have that sort of that you have that group who obviously thinks very strongly about certain approach or certain methodology. Then they get caught in the camp of trying to find out which one is better. Okay, since we are at this topic of dirty word, I'll throw in 2 more dirty words for there, which is evaluation effectiveness. I have to admit, these are terms that we commonly use. in our conversation with people, program managers. But I also realized that sometimes these words, even though people cognitively understand, emotionally, it actually makes us a little bit defensive, because it becomes like, hey, I've been doing this work for so long. What do you mean by evaluate me? Are you saying that what I'm doing is not helpful, it's not beneficial, it's not out of best practice and things like that? It doesn't always come up that way. But I can tell you in the way people respond during engagements, that's the sense that I got, that sometimes we use the word very loosely, very easily, but actually there are certain people who react quite differently to those words. So with these things put together, really like, wow, I thought we just want to do evaluation. I thought it was as simple as that, but evaluation, effectiveness, RCT, all draws sort of the different reactions for me. At the end of the day, I think what's most important in this journey is not not yet. I think what pains me the most hearing these conversations is that people get caught up in this whole conversation and discussion or debate about what is better, which is better. But I think for Singapore, we are at this space where we actually need to recognize that every approach and methodology has its place. It depends on your operating context. It depends on your program numbers. It depends on whether this is an entirely new program that has never been done, or it is something that has been taken from elsewhere, which has already shown strong evidence. I think whether it's qualitative and methods, or you use waitlist control, you use the realist approach. I think what's more important is that we all band together and look and answer the sort of ultimate question, rather than saying who is better and which should be the way to go. Everyone has his place. Everyone adds to that journey. The question is, how are we at the end of the day bringing ourselves one step closer to answering the question of what works? That to me is the bottom line, right? So for some programs that is very small, that's just starting out, something totally new, you may have to use a qualitative approach, just because you need, I think one of the newer terms is participatory research. You may have to do that because you're trying to get information from your beneficiaries to fine-tune your program before you formally manualize it and run it in a bigger scale. That's necessary, right? And doesn't mean that every other program out there, once you start to RCT, I think it really doesn't work. To me, at least, I think it doesn't work that way. And I mean, my hope after doing this so many years, and I think also that's why I moved over to CSS, helming research right now, is really to bring the conversation together, to unite the different pieces as one big sort of collaboration, rather than saying that, oh, NCSS only does this, or NCSS, or the best way is only RCT. I think if you hear people talking about it, you should ring an alarm bell, because that should not be the way. For us, such a small country with such limited small numbers that sort of we are working with, right, is where we should be heading to as well. So, leave with the last slide. So what is last thing we found? The last point I think at the top we want to end here is that last thing I found that was really helpful in this journey, and it's a call for all the researchers among us, is that what we are aiming to collect or measure, is it even relevant to our colleagues who are carrying out the work on a day-to-day basis? And there are two elements to this. If what they collect on a day-to-day basis is relevant to their ops, your buy-in will be much higher. So for example, Yiwei shared earlier that we use the YOQ questionnaire. It helps us take a quick snapshot of the well-being of the youth before they come in treatment. The commitment then was that we made, well, I wouldn't say we made the researchers, we asked the researchers to kindly help us. The moment we fill up the form, we pass it to them. They'll quickly churn the results out, calculate the scores, the domain level, help us flag out which are in the clinical range, and so on and so forth. and then we pump that information quickly back to the therapist. So as they run the session, as they do their case planning, as they talk to their supervisors, they have something to fall back on. No, look, at the session, it was like that. But in their self-report, these are some other things that we found out. When it becomes part of their work, I can tell you the researchers' work is so much easier because you have the therapist saying, hey, I really feeling for you really. Can you quickly give me the number so that I can work with the, in the end, it was the therapist chasing the researcher and not the other way around, which I thought was quite unique, and something must be right there because usually it's always researchers say, hey, where's the data for this? Can you give it to us, right? The second element, if you think about making sure the measures and the data collected is relevant to their work, it helps us to streamline what we want to collect. Really, if you ask any researcher, they will say, oh, what to measure? I measure everything. But it's not, you can't do it that way because if your therapists don't give up on you, the families will. Before they even start therapy, they already die already. Like they die of filling out questionnaires, sitting there 1.5 hours just to do questionnaire. It's crazy. And where possible, the streamlining can either just, depending on what the program stage is, use the most succinct measure you can find. Personally, I think those broad measures that gives a snapshot of different aspects of the person's life is probably the way to go. And sometimes where possible, in our case, we work closely with probation officers. So some of the things that they collect already, right? We don't go and double dip. We just say, okay, just pass that. We just use that in our case management planning, or we'll just take that sort of scores as part of pre-test data, and we will just use it rather than going to collect a whole new set altogether. So that's what when there's that marriage between practice and research, I think that's what helped us push through this journey in FFT. So the point I'll make here is this: I want to tell a little bit of Koyok for NCSS. It is this sector evaluation framework that was recently launched by the CSS. But I think it's precisely because of the experience and knowledge I gained from doing evaluating FFT that I decided to change portfolio and move into this space. The desire is really to help our social service partners to support them in this sort of a research and evaluation journey. I'm not sure how many of us know, but SEF is a sort of shared measurement framework that provides a common language to help SSA demonstrate effectiveness of their program. So SEF has 2 tiers. The top tier, which is the broader tier, captures broadly the quality of life of the service users. It covers a few domains, so it gives you a very quick snapshot about how the service users are when they come in and when they leave. And the second tier is a little bit more program specific. So for example, if your program deals with mental health, then all the SSAs in the mental health space will use the same sort of common tool. Then that gives a very simple and clear language for you and the colleagues from a different SSA to talk about program improvement, or to even find benchmarks to see how our program is faring across different agencies, for example. And with no doubt having a sort of common framework, measurement framework may lose some resolution, but we believe that the SEF at the end of the day will help the entire sector with a few things. One, that everyone is using sort of psychometrically sound measures, so there's no issue there. 2, if everyone in the same space talks apples to apples, that makes the conversation so much easier. And 3, by coming together to use shared measurement, we can actually help one another with comparison group. So with the quality of life, I'm sure most of you are aware, NCSS has been collecting from the general population for quite some time already. So with whatever data that the SSAs can collect pre-post of their program or QR, then in itself is already one way for them to get a sense of where their service users are in relation to the rest. And it also really helps address most of the pressing concerns when we engage SSAs. They're telling us how to find program, how to find control group. We only serve that many. It's not easy. we don't have the resources to go and track and follow these people. So all in all, I think at the end of the day, SCF is meant to be in that space to help that sort of research and evaluation efforts within the sector. So with that, I shall end our sharing. I think we are probably quite good on time. Eddie will be taking over, right? The only thing we ask is don't ask us difficult questions. But I hope that sharing was helpful for all of us.
Yes, Eric, thank you. It's very helpful. So I assume now I will take over, am I right? But first, I want to thank the two of you for this very clear and well-delivered talk on an interesting topic that I think is important not only for an empirical-based scientific understanding of youth offender and functional family therapy, but also for practitioners concerning an implementable intervention that I think can make a real difference to helping youth offenders. I would like to say that I learned a lot from your research, especially as somebody who I must confess do not have much knowledge on the subject. I do have three broad takeaways. Broad because I won't be saying too much because I would like to the real discussion to be in the Q&A. So first, I'm really intrigued by the use of family in this method as a key component of the intervention. In fact, it's not just a component, it's a foundation of it. So as I understand, many intervention methods are, how should I say, intrapersonal, meaning that they focus more on the person, and neglects how the external social environment might play a role. While these methods may have their effectiveness, in my area of research in psychological science, we have already known for some time that the social context have a pivotal influence on the person's emotions, thoughts, and behavior. So our behaviors are simply not shaped just by our inner feelings and thinking and beliefs, but perhaps more strongly also by the people in our lives, right? And I think this is especially so in an Asian culture, which leads to my next broad takeaway. Very often in my research, the processes that were previously found in Western samples may work differently in non-Western samples. A key difference, there's lots of different, but a key difference is that, again, in what you call collectivistic cultures, behaviors are determined a lot more by social factors. Therefore, I certainly agree that FFT, and in fact, any intervention that was rooted in Western assumptions should be examined in non-Western context. So I really like that this research is being done in Singapore in an attempt to, to examine it. My third broad takeaway is this. I definitely agree that research needs to be multi-method, and I agree with the two of you that one really should not strongly and blindly advocate just one method, but I still can't help but feel impressed by several methodological aspects of the study. So I would just like to say that, including the fact that you have a control group, you have random assignment, you have many measures, and you have repeated measures, and you even, I think, did a power analysis, okay, in the paper, all right? And it spent many years, okay, to conduct the study. And it's often really difficult, often a logistic nightmare, okay, sometimes plainly impossible to find a control group or to run a longitudinal design or to include many variables into the questionnaire set and so on, okay? So sometimes when people think about research, so I really can relate to what Eric says. When people think about research, they expect so much, but in reality, you can only do so much, right? You probably have seen a lot of memes, right, about design expectations from funders to be so much, but actually what the person can produce is only so much, all right? So realities have to come in. But anyway, this study did it, and I think I want to say it exemplified good research, all right? So, and of course, research always leads to more questions and so on, whether it replicates, in what context, blah, 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 and things like that. So it's just part of the scientific journey. It's just part of the journey that the practitioners have to find out whether a certain method is applicable in a certain context, in a certain group, all right? So I would like to begin the Q&A now. And I see a lot of interesting questions coming up already. I do hope to be able to address as many of them as possible, but perhaps I may throw out one first, okay, if I may start the first question. I wonder whether the result could be generalized to other youth offenders in Singapore, okay, other types of youth offender. In fact, a different way to ask it could be, are there limits to FFT with regards to the types of behavior it can intervene? In fact, the question here that is submitted, one of the few that received the most vote is asked a similar theme. The question is this: why can't FFT be used with youths who have committed sexual offenses? So I think a lot of people are wondering, what are the boundary conditions, of FFT, right? What kind of behaviors it can address, what kind of sample group, what kind of context, it's really broad. So I'm looking forward to hear any opinions, any perspective, any insights that you may have.
Luckily, Iwei is very prepared to answer that question.
Yeah, I will take this question and maybe Eric can add on if anything. In general, actually, the criteria for FFT is quite loose in a sense. FFT address most offending behaviors. And in fact, I think when the model first started, they addressed the substance abuse issues. Then it also expanded to other delinquent behavior, gang involvement, aggression, theft, and so on. The reason that sexual offending was excluded, first because so far there hasn't been sufficient evidence to show that FFT actually works with this population. Second is, in FFT, we have this assumption that someone's behavior always have some intent or impact on the other person is for some relational purpose. Like, for example, if the father physically hit his children, the behavior is not helpful, but we want to elicit what the intent behind is. Really, father was desperate to make things right for the children. Father was really trying to get his words across to the children. There's something that we can help to draw the relationship out from the behavior itself. But for sexual offending, most of the time is focused very much on the person's own pleasure, coping. There's not much we can actually draw the relationship out. Like, for example, if intra-fam sexual abuse, we can't really say that, the perpetrator wants to get emotional connection from the victim. That just doesn't sound right. And with that, that's why we also didn't include sexual offending population in our study. But does that mean we totally cannot see such youth at all? It's also not true. So, for example, someone is he sexually offended. At the same time, he has a lot of family issues that give him a lot of stress. What we did was to let the person go through sexual offending specific therapy first to address those risk factors first. Then we top up with FFT to address the family dynamics, the family issues that's also contributed to his offending behavior. But first, we need the person to go through the sexual offending intervention first. Yeah.
Thank you. So how about any general boundary conditions? Any limitation do you feel about these intervention methods? Is it plausible that in some it cannot be applicable, it has no effectiveness or less effectiveness in certain contexts? Any thoughts about that?
In general, it's actually because we also have FFT child welfare, so the age range is really 0 to 18 years old. There's no sufficient research evidence to show that it is effective in the youth beyond 18 years old. But in Singapore context, sometimes we do give those like 19 years old because they still live with their parents and all that. The reason is when they are adults, the dynamic is very different already. Yeah, they are more like independent learning, that kind. And so age is one criteria. And we need the child or youth to live with the caregiver. So we had some cases, they actually live apart, but they want to do FFT just to improve family relationship. But we tell them this probably won't be effective because even if we see them once a week, they don't get a chance to really practice it. And they will definitely like forget about what's taught. So yeah, so we also don't take those who don't live with their caregiver. A caregiver doesn't mean parents. Sometimes it can be grandparents, as long as they are actively involved in the child or youth's life.
Yeah. Actually, that also lead nicely into one of the questions I have about FFT. Can you provide more concrete details about what really goes on in the FFT? I mean, I can imagine that there are lots of such details, you know. I mean, off the top of my head are things like which family member the counselor speak to, right? I mean, is there a selection process, like you only speak to the father or mother or grandparents and so on? Is there a structured set of questions? What kind of issues and themes you all discuss? I mean, obviously, the discussion will be on the youth offender. Also, what kind of skills the family members equipped with to help the youth? So, I mean, just to give us a more concrete understanding of what really goes on the ground when the counselor speak to the family.
Okay. Yeah. So before we went in, when we look at the case file, we first look at who played a significant role in the youth's life. And that question may lead to answers like parents, grandparents, sometimes it's girlfriend / boyfriend, sometimes can be my siblings, they're actually quite involved. So yeah, so as long as there are people who actively involved, have a significant influence in the person's life, they will be included. But whether they will be included throughout the therapy, it depends. Because sometimes after a while, we realize, okay, actually this one, first the person may have a lot of work commitment, they cannot come every time, but also the role can, like his or her role is a bit less than the others, then we may selectively include them in different sessions. I can give a brief overview of how the whole therapy is like. Basically, it has 3 phases. The first phase is about engagement and motivation. So that phase, we really try to get ourselves into the family, get the family members come together. Often what we do is try to reduce the blaming negativity at home, to build some hope, to let them see that how they can work together, and to help them see the struggle as a relational struggle. So like just now, Sean's family, everyone have different issues. What we want to tell them is really all of you are trying to seek connection, but the way you guys sought connection in the past may not be helpful. So in this case, then moving on, we want to see how to seek connection in a more helpful way. And the second phase is behavior change. This is a phase that I always see it as like I have a toolbox. It depends on what the family needs. So if the family need communication skills, need problem solving skills, I teach those. But for another family, they may be okay with that, but they have difficulties with setting boundaries for the child. Then we focus more on the parenting part. But it's not just telling parents what to do, because the youth also play a part in these dynamics. Then we will figure out, okay, how the parents can set boundaries, how the youth can also propose some solutions. It depends on how they usually relate with each other. And in this way, we help them to make things more functional. Yeah, the unique thing about FFT is we may not tell parents, you are the leader in the house. In some family, the youth really made the call at home. It just in the past, the call he made are not very helpful, always made the wrong call in a sense. So then we help them see, okay, youth, you can still make decisions, but you need to make good decisions. And they feel very happy because, oh, you mean I don't have to everything listen to my parents, I still can make the call. Okay, then what do I do? So in this way, we actually help the family to be more functional while still maintain the kind of hierarchy they had. Because some parents also, they actually do not want to be the super one-up kind of parents. They are okay to just let the youth make decision. Yeah, so this is really the part that we have this a la carte menu for the family to see what fits them the best, what they need the best. Then the last phase is about generalization, is where the family members use what they have been taught to use in other contexts. We have parents tell us, oh, you know, the communication skill I learned, I also use it at work, it helps. So this is what tells us, okay, they are really learning the skill and practicing and making changes. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about the family context itself. We want them to be able to also manage the other aspects in their life. And yeah, when we see they're doing that, then okay, it's time for us to exit the family.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the answer. In fact, it nicely, I think, addressed several of the questions submitted, such as what goes on usually in a session. Do you have anything to make the family members feel safe? So question like this, and yeah, I mean, some of them receive a lot of votes. And maybe just one more before I have a question that seems relevant for Eric, that Yue can take a rest. Just one more question for you, Yue. I'm also wondering about it myself as well. I mean, I can kind of like anticipate what is the answer, you know, which is that you cannot do everything. All right. The question is this: if FFT is using a family systemic approach, why are the measures just focused on youth? Right? I mean, I suppose, why don't you measure the family members too? I mean, wouldn't that provide insights into the process and effectiveness?
Okay, so to measure the family, we focus more on the family dynamics itself, which is the FAD we used. The reason we focus on the youth is also because at the end of the day, the referral reason because of the youth offending. And we want to really see that in the end, like what I mentioned, FFT is actually not about mediating family conflicts. It's not to make them happier, just have less conflict. The focus still come back to reducing risk factors and increase the strength. And the referral question was more focused on the youth, and that's why we also focus on the youth well-being more. Yeah, I don't know whether Eric had anything to add on.
I thought the simplest answer to that question was Eric forgot to put it in initially when we draw up the evaluation plan.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
No, I think it was still the same toss-up between how much do I want to spend, let the youth and the family spend doing questionnaires, whether what we have was enough to get a quick sense of what we need. So I think what is not apparent here, we also have some sort of FFT themselves have some questionnaires that they give to the parents. It's just a few questions to ask about what they think about the youth behavior, what they think about their trust towards the therapist and things like that. There are all these other sort of proxies that we use to get a sense. Right. So it really comes back to one of my earlier points earlier, is that whatever we can call, if you ask a researcher, we want to collect every single thing. But sometimes I think as a researcher, we need to decide, hey, actually certain things I can just proxy from something else, rather than having a specific measure just to measure that particular component. That also it depends on the stage of the program itself is in. If FFT has already had a lot of evaluation data backed up from elsewhere, we didn't want to go with the whole lot. We just need to quickly get a good sense of effectiveness, and then that was enough. The other aspect that we actually got, which is not apparent through the RCT as well, is actually your real life story. When your therapist comes back, talks about the family, the changes, while we may not have actually measured it, at least in the supervision sessions, we are capturing some of these things, how the dynamics have changed, how hardened hearts have been softened, just so to allow the youth to be a bit more independent and things like that. So it's really a constellation of things rather than having one measure for everything that we wanted to track. Plus, I forgot. So.
I can so relate to this. And I'm a researcher myself. So sometimes there's only so much you can do. And sometimes it's, I forgot. Now, the next question will be about the more practical issues, right? So of course, anybody can answer. What challenges have you experienced in expanding this service? And then there are questions that follow up. What are the challenges do you expect? How do you plan to adapt to new challenges not experienced when you ran it at a smaller scale?
I think, by and large, the biggest challenge we have is finding the right people to do this job. And I don't mean that to say that there are people who are not suitable for it. I mean, okay, then there are some people who just cannot work with very difficult families because their values are different. But for most of us in the social service sector, actually all have a very big heart for families. They're willing and wanting to go all the way for these families. But the challenge is that retaining them and helping see and get the momentum in doing these things to see successes. And I mentioned during my presentation earlier to take some of the blame away, because if things don't go well, a lot of them get very disheartened quite easily. And coupled with, it's really not easy to have to, because in grad school, most of us are taught to do CBT, and most people run group programs, right? But group programs are quite different. All the participants are is in a way easier to manage because they're all used, they have the same problem, everything is so structured from the activities and things like that. But in the family session is quite different. It is quite challenging. So I would say in terms of expansion, the most difficult thing is actually maintaining and keeping really good staff. Yeah, just simply because it does at some point in time take a toll from our guys lah. Yeah, the longest survivor is Iwei. But yeah, I think that is the biggest difficulty in terms of expansion.
Yeah. Yes. Since you mentioned it, I'm also curious about staff management, hiring. Do your counselors feel how should I say stressed about the process? Speaking to them, is there a factor that I'm not sure about the turnout rate? So how are they coping with doing the counseling?
It takes a lot of guidance and support from, I think, the supervisors, because we know for a fact, I mean, even for myself, when I first started doing it, it was like I was sitting, thinking about the session. Sometimes I'm like, oh, what do I do next? Like, it's quite challenging. It's quite difficult for anyone who first started off. So naturally, there are a lot of stress. I can tell you that one of the biggest difference for our team, and I safely say it comes up even when the others from within the department that's not from my team, they can observe and see very differently, is that really because the model rests on being strength-based, that really comes out very strongly from within the team. So in terms, you asked about coping, when the challenges, when the going gets difficult, being strength-based with your own colleagues, with the therapist, is really helpful. So I mentioned earlier about manual, how we deflect some of the responsibility to the manual. Say, hey, FFT say must do like that. If it doesn't work, it's not you. It's just that this approach doesn't suit well for the family at this point in time. And then the other aspect about your colleagues, your supervisors, your leaders being strength-based, I think that really helps to bolster some of the stress and the challenges that our guys go through.
Yeah. And I think a related question that can be asked, one that also received quite a number of votes, with regard to expanding services, which SSA are involved or trained in using FFT?
Would you like to?
Okay, so we have trained some counselors therapists from Singapore Children's Society, Epworth Community Service. That's, I think, when we started, these two are the first two we trained, and as we expand to FFT's child welfare, FFT pre-FGO, we also have therapies from Muhammadiyah, not Muhammadiyah, that one haven't hired yet. We also have from other let me just recall. What's the other one?
When we first
Grace
expanded,
Haven. Sorry, Grace Haven. Yeah. Grace Haven.
Okay.
And I think Children's Society also have a few therapists in different teams. So some in child welfare, some in pre-FGO. Yeah, same for Epworth. They have some in pre-FGO, some in the juvenile justice, the youth offending population. Yeah.
I see. I'm not sure you mentioned about this already. I think there was one question that asked, how are the counselors trained? Is there like a formalized training methods, or it's just something, how should I say, you just go ahead with instinct on the ball and just try to do the best with what you have?
No, we can't do that. So we actually have a very
given that it's pretty new.
And we have a very fixed training schedule from the developer. So we can't even do the training ourselves. It's always from the developer. And they are trained, the SSA counselors are trained together with our MSF officers together. So as long as you are going to start FFT, you need to go through that amount of trainings that you need to attend. In fact, it's quite intensive in the first year. It's like every quarter got one training, that kind. Yeah. So along the way, and we have weekly supervision to support. Yeah.
I see. Okay. Questions. There's a question that's gained a number of votes. That was in a short while. How is the effectiveness of FFT with FGO clients so far?
Eric, you want to take this?
Can you ask the question? I got cut off.
Yeah. How is the effectiveness of FFT with FGO clients so far?
Oh, I actually don't. I can't. Well, I'm the wrong person to ask. But wait. Let me be fair. We have looked at some of the dropout numbers, and similarly, right? We look at dropout numbers, those who succeed, completed, and things like that. If I don't remember wrongly, based on before FGO even started, because we actually started collecting data from that group, right? I think the dropout numbers are not worse. I think it might be slightly better, in fact, in terms of keeping them in the program. But I have to admit, I don't have all the information offhand, unless maybe we can remember from
I don't think we have had the prelim results or official results.
Yeah, in fact, I think just coming into this year, I did ask them to quickly put some prelim stuff together so that at least we can take stock on the implementation and how things are going. Because I also know there are some challenges on the ground in terms of just doing family therapy. So we also wanted to quickly try and address some of these issues before it drains everyone else out.
Yeah.
But I don't have the quick numbers. I wish I had. Who knows? Maybe next year we will have the evaluation findings that we can present.
I shall ask my center to book you on that. So yeah, still on the topic of training, I think this is also relevant. Will NCSS or MSF be training more therapists in FFT on a continued and regular basis?
I would like to say yes. I think I think I speak on behalf of Iwe and the rest of the team as well. We strongly believe that family work, if you want to work with children and young people, you must have a way to work with families. You must include them right from the start. And I think that is our starting point. With that vision, with that hope, it's always our desire to want to keep finding opportunities to expand. Unfortunately, sometimes for ourselves, we are limited by other forces that are not within my control, whether it's in terms of funding or in terms of policy. But I think the one strongest reason why we are doing RCT, putting findings out there, doing CA, I want to put those evidence plainly on the table out there first. At least if people ask, we already showed that it works, we already showed that it's cost effectiveness. The question that you need to ask, how come you're choosing everything else except it? that sort of conversation is not easy to have, especially we have continually changing leaders and different management teams. So there's an ongoing conversation. We are definitely looking at the next opportunity we can expand and train more people to do the FFT. And of course, not just serve MSF clients. I think our biggest hope is that the skill can be translated to the wider sector, so that even before the child and the young people have behavioral problems, right, you're already there helping them in this way. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, thanks for the answers. And I personally also gained lots of insights. We only have, I think, 3 minutes left. Am I right? So the scheduled time is, I may have forgotten. So I would just like to give the Yiwei and Eric the floor to have your thoughts, any other remaining thoughts about FFT or anything that you think is related. It can be anything, all right? Future plans, concerns, inspirations, and so on. Okay, so maybe Yiwei can start first, and then Eric can continue. So Eric has the advantage of thinking through his thoughts, and Yiwei is not put on the spot.
Yeah, okay. I think as a veteran FFT therapist, it's definitely, I think the journey was not easy and also very fruitful for me, for myself. And like what we put in the last slide is really a journey. I don't think there's an end to when is good enough in terms of this family work, or when is the destination. I think along the way, as a therapist, I grow a lot, I learn a lot. And as I need to confront all the fear when I go into the family, it also helped me grow. And along the way, as I need to supervise and get involved in the research piece, then I see a broader view of really like the value of family work in addressing. The more I look at it, the more I realize, okay, yeah, we really need to work with the system instead of just individuals like one by one add together. And in this whole journey, I think really the support from colleagues, from leaders, from our partners, in fact, because like a lot of times we have caseworkers from other departments, other agencies, that all we come together. In the sense, we are also a family to work together. And I think there's a parallel here. And it's something that we want to carry forward. Yeah.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, just 2 things from me. As I'm thinking back about this whole journey, I think it's a bit selfish to say, but I think I gained the most out of it in the sense of how just doing the model, working with families, struggling with therapists, and just seeing everything through the FFT lens. I actually gained a whole lot. It has actually really changed the way I see and run teams, or maybe just how I see challenges now in front of me. I'm like, oh, okay, no, there's a bit more of acceptance really. Don't need to struggle so much. So I actually think I gained a lot out of this, and as I have changed portfolio, I've of course passed the baton to this lady, and I'm very sure clinically she will do a good job in terms of helping train and support therapists. But in terms of where to now, I really hope I can help the sector in that conversation about program evaluation and research. I think the biggest gain for us, as for Singapore, would be that if everybody band together to do something together, whether it is through a shared measurement framework in measuring things, or even just being kind, sharing resources and things like that. I think that's the sort of approach, sort of state I want to see within the sector. And I think that's really important. Not because I have money or bonus to gain from showing things work. Clearly no. I think that's important because a lot of the people in the sector has put in a lot of effort, a lot of heart, a lot of blood poured into helping families who are struggling. And I think the biggest missed opportunity in the past was that people see evaluation as a, well, why are you judging me? But I hope that we can help them see that, look, no, I'm helping you prove a point to your funders. Why should you be working so hard and asking for funding and things like that? That conversation should be much easier for you because you've already done a lot of the work on a day-to-day basis. Just let us use numbers to help you in that journey. I think that's where I want to take. I guess in this next part of my career to be yeah. So that's a must.
Yeah. Thank you, Ewan and Eric. So this marks the end of this webinar, and I certainly want to know more about these methods, and I look forward to more research. I'm of the view that this method do have importance application, with regards to youth offenders. And I would like to thank everybody who is here for sparing your time to attend this webinar. And I also thank my colleagues in SSR for organizing this webinar. So I think, Zihan, maybe I pass the floor to you.
Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you everyone for staying on until the end of our webinar. So I've just launched a poll for today's webinar. Please tell us what you think via our feedback poll. And we are sorry if we could not get to your question. So we will share the speakers' email addresses with you in a follow-up email. And if you have any unanswered or follow-up questions for them, you may contact them directly. So we have come to the end of today's webinar. But I would like to thank Eric, Yiwei, and Eddie today for joining us this session. And I've learned a lot about how FFT works, the strengths and limitations of using RCT for evaluating social service programs, as well as what are the practical implications of the findings. So just a bit more before I close the session. So I'm pleased to share that our next webinar will be held on the 18th of May at 3:30 p.m. So we have invited Professor John Eastwood from Sydney, who will be sharing his team's critical realist evaluation of a care coordination initiative for vulnerable families. So the key questions of realist evaluation are: what intervention works, for whom, and under what conditions do they work? So one of the key focus is on how to evaluate programs that are context specific, especially where programs may work well in one setting, but not necessarily in another setting. So Dr. Robin Tan, who is also the instructor for upcoming realist evaluation workshop, will be moderating this webinar in May. So please sign up for our mailing list to receive more information, as well as regular updates on our events. So if you're interested to attend our workshop on realist evaluation, please scan the following QR code to find out more. Okay. And finally, just to repeat that we will be sending our updates on events, webinars, workshops through our mailing list. So please sign up if you want to find out more about SSR. And we are also on Facebook and LinkedIn if you'd like to follow us on these platforms. So thank you so much, everyone. Again, speakers and moderator, for joining us today. We have come to the end of this session.
Thank you.
Thank you.